Welcome to the AEC Groundbreaking Growth podcast.
Hosted by Stambaugh Ness.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Groundbreaking Growth, the podcast where we explore trends, ideas, and what it really takes to lead the future of the AEC industry. I'm Emily, and I am here with my co-host, Jen. Hi, Jen.
Hello.
So today's episode, we are very excited. It's all about saying yes to new opportunities, taking leaps, and how the entrepreneurial mindset can shape your growth in unexpected ways. We're really excited to be joined by someone who knows this path well, Josh Miles. He's the founder of Bold Brand, longtime AEC marketing expert, speaker, author, podcaster, overall knowledge powerhouse in the AEC industry. We're excited to have him here. Jen, do you want to do the honors of introducing?
Yes. Just to kind of build on what Emily said, so excited to have Josh here today. He's really that creative strategist that all the AEC firms need. We were chatting kind of before the episode just about how diverse kind of AEC is, from small business ownership all the way up to big firms, and how everyone really should have a brand strategy. So Josh is kind of the go-to guy in that field. He's a well-known speaker in SMPS and is really exploring kind of what's next in content, branding, business development, et cetera. So Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yeah, would love to kick things off with your story. If you can tell us a little bit about your career journey and specifically how you got into the AEC industry.
Yeah, I'm probably the weird case where, some kid last day of high school, senior year, had the dad cam in my face and he was like, quick, tell the time capsule where you're going to be in 10 years. And I said, I'm going to own my own graphic design firm. And I'm the weirdo who said that as a senior. I studied it in college. I went on to work for other people and I had my own thing started a little bit ahead of that 10-year mark. So age 25, I think I filed the paperwork to start Miles Design LLC. And we didn't have any kind of focus, or I didn't know what AEC was or any of that. But I was sitting down with my first graphic designer and he was like, man, I think our websites would look a lot cooler if we had a cool product or a cool thing that a lot of the work we were doing was already B2B and services.
Mm-hmm.
But it was insurance brokers and,
There's
sales
not much
coaching.
Cool stuff in insurance, let me tell you.
There's not cool elevations and cool visuals and drone shots and all that stuff with it. And so just so happened, we put that out into the world and came back that we got a chance to work on our first interior design website. And so that went pretty well. It was a small firm. And then, another small architect hit us up after that. And that went really well. And then a bigger architecture firm called Ratio, who also has, headquartered in Indianapolis, but also has presence in Denver now, hired us to do their website. This was 2009 or so. And that went on to win the best website in the SMPS Marketing Communication Awards in 2010, which sort of accidentally thrust us into the AEC world. So from that website on, we had people calling us and saying, we want a Ratio website. We're like, well, you can't have Ratio's website, but we can make you something pretty awesome too. So that's kind of how we found our way into this space.
Yeah, I love listening to that story, and I feel like it's really resonant with the younger generation of leaders that, although you had this very I will own my own graphic design firm, especially with marketers, it's a case where you happen into AEC, right? It wasn't I will own my own graphic design firm in the AEC industry.
Yeah. No, that was
specializing.
That was absent from the statement.
Yes. Yeah. Sure. And one of the things as I'm listening to your story and as you're talking through it, that really stands out and sort of reflects this power of saying yes to new and sometimes unexpected opportunities, like the AEC industry, right? You've taken steps that were pretty bold and unexpected. from just launching a branding firm to public speaking to jumping into video and podcasting. Can you share how taking some of these risks or just being open to trying something new and saying yes has shaped your career a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. In those early days, we literally had a joke or kind of a policy in our office. We had landline phones at everybody's desk. And, it was half joke, but it was serious. I said, when the phone rings, we say yes. So when people were like, hey, will you make a design for my dog's birthday? Like that wasn't actually a thing, but it was like, it doesn't mean we want to market it. It doesn't mean we want to tell other people we would do it. We won't let anybody share that. But, early on, we were just like trying to get the work and trying to grow the business and trying to stay afloat. And that paid off really well, especially when, early days, I was at an SMPS Indiana program, and I was talking to Holly Bolton, who would later go on to be our president, and David Working, who was chairing Build Business, which is what the SMPS annual conference used to be called. And, David was, week and a half away from taking the stage and welcoming everyone to Chicago. And I had no plans to go. I'd never been to one before. But Chicago is a short 3-hour drive from Indianapolis. And I said, hey, David, I hope you're all set. He's like, yeah, all I got to do is basically show up and read the teleprompter at this point. And I don't even know why I asked him, but I said, hey, I hope none of your speakers are flaking out on you or anything. And he looked at me funny and was like, actually, my social media duo that was going to speak had a little falling out or something. And now neither one of them are coming. And we totally have a hole. But otherwise, it's good. And Holly looked at me and then looked at David and said, well, I bet Josh could speak on social media. And he's like, I mean, it's in a week. Do you think you could pull it off? And I was like, well, coincidentally, I'm writing the chapter on social media for my book that is yet to come out yet. And I could just share that chapter on stage. And he was like, well, if you're serious, let's do it. And so cool. From that point forward, just saying yes to that one little thing. I spoke at almost every Build Business or Amplify conference since then, which is pretty crazy to think of how that one little yes turned into all of those speaking opportunities.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm super excited to speak at this year's Amplify with Josh on a panel talking about podcasting. So thanks for including me in that. But also, another thing that, as we were talking about that, just really stands out is this idea. I think when you're younger and you're just starting your career, right? It's like, I feel like I have to have it all figured out before I say yes, or I have to, know all these things or take this next step. But I think it's really inspiring to just hear that story of like, I just said yes, right? Like I didn't have it all figured out, but I was like, I'll speak on social media at this upcoming conference. Yes, let's do it.
I mean, maybe tying all that together, I was a longtime audio podcaster. I started my first show, Obsessed with Design, in 2016. So, going on almost 10 years of podcast background. I think that makes me a grandpa on podcast here.
We're just little younglings, I guess.
Just little baby podcasters.
Yeah.
But so I had done several episodes, maybe 100 by then. And I thought, I should try to do a video episode. Like, let's see what that does for SEO. Let's see what that does for viewership. And so all of my other episodes were interview shows like this, where I would record via Zoom, but just use the audio. And I thought, I'll try just as an experiment, I'll do a solo episode. It's the first one I did, I think one of 2 solo episodes I had for that show. And I took my iPhone and I taped it, like duct taped it to my monitor because I didn't have the right tripod. I didn't have any of the right gear. I had a nice microphone because I was a podcaster, but that was the only stuff that I had. Yeah. And it did all the things I wanted it to. It blew up on SEO. The video was really performed really well. But the video didn't look right. Like I couldn't put my finger on what it was. I just knew it looked just looked okay. And so I went down the YouTube rabbit hole of like, why doesn't my phone look great? Or why doesn't my lens look good? And, lighting and cameras and lenses and all the things, and just sort of really developed a passion for video and photography from that one little experiment that I said yes to in my own head.
Yeah.
And, today video is like half of my business. Still very branding focused, but half of my work is video. And for me, it makes sense because I think, especially in 2025, there's nothing that's a better expression of your brand than you can get your people on camera talking about a project or talking about why they work there, talking about, what they're passionate about, especially in an industry where it's all about who you like, you trust, and those are the people that you work with. And video is really magical about being able to bridge that gap of like, oh, I think I could hang out with that person or have a drink with them or work with them or whatever. And so I think it's a really powerful addition to that. But again, if I hadn't just done that one little experiment, like I wouldn't be sitting here doing all those things that we're doing today.
Yeah. And I love kind of your connection there on relationships and how important they are. Because when I think back, I kind of grew up in the construction industry, and I think of my dad just talking about like, oh, so-and-so, we did this project together and XYZ, and making all those connections. And the industry is kind of small, I'll say. It's very family-based. Like, of other individuals, even if you're doing work out of state, out of your region, et cetera. And those connections are so important, to your point. And where my dad may have picked up the phone and called, a work friend and chatted for 15 minutes about what's going on. Nowadays, like, we see each other through our social posts and, video if we're on YouTube and kind of talking about our projects. So I think it's kind of grown as technology has, changed how we interact and tell our stories. And I'm sure, Josh, for you, kind of relationships and connection have been so important in your career growth and, with SMPS and whatnot. Can you kind of talk a little bit about how connections, networking, and really just kind of showing up and building a true, genuine relationship with people has helped create growth for you and for your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so back really before LinkedIn existed, I literally kept a notebook. And it was like these little, I called it the dots and lines thing. So I would like draw a dot with a person or a institution like AIGA or SMPS, where I would meet people. And because sometimes you have a hard time remembering, like, how did we get connected to that client or that company or whatever? And it's seldom like go to a networking event and get a new client. It's go to an event and meet a person and tell them your story, and they tell you their story. And then you figure out who you can help and how you can connect them to somebody else. So I kept this thing on paper, and then it turned into this really complicated Adobe Illustrator file where it was like dots and lines, and I'd make the dots bigger as they got to be more prominent, and it became a poster. And, bottom line is my best friend Tori and I were talk all the time. And the thing that we ask each other all the time, like, if you had to do it over, if you had to start a brand new business, brand new market, brand new thing, ironically, that's sort of what I'm doing today. He's like, where would you start? What's number one? And the answer is always build the network. It is always the people and the connections. It is the most important thing in starting any kind of business, is building that network. And so for me, SMPS has been very, very instrumental in that, because it's been so much of our conversation even today. But all of the connections that I have made through that organization and speaking opportunities, I often joke, I don't know if it's going to be 6 days, 6 months, or 6 years later. Like, anytime I speak, I'm going to get a client from that talk. One a couple of years back said, "Oh yeah, I saw you speak in San Francisco." And I was like, in 2012?
That's good memory they have.
The answer was yes.
Or you made a great impression, I'm sure.
Yeah, you really connected with him. Yeah.
Right. Like, what have you been waiting for? But no, it's pretty awesome. And it's great to have those connections from a marketing standpoint. I don't think there's much better than, being there in person. Video is maybe a close second, but
yeah. Well, I was going to say, as a little bit of a follow-up, like, what would be one of your recommendations or something that AEC professionals can do to stay relevant or kind of build their visibility a little bit more? What would you recommend either firm owners or leaders do to stay a bit more visible in the marketplace?
So I think anything to build your personal brand, and typically I would include speaking, writing, certainly attending, being present in your local market, volunteering, any of those things, you'll get out of it what you put into it. And there's probably not a better platform for professionals than LinkedIn right now to sort of do that virtually. And it's just a great way to, again, it's not publishing for the likes, but you're publishing to stay top of mind and to stay as a top of mind preferred resource for that. So when somebody's thinking about a thing, they think of you. It's the same reason car companies and car dealers run ads all year, every day. And, the hoods are up, the balloons are up, the hoods are down, the signs are up, the dancing thing is out. Like it's all the things. So when you are finally thinking it's time for me to upgrade this old Jeep, that you're like, oh, I just drove past and now I'm thinking of whatever brand that was that had the promotion going on.
Yep.
Mhm.
Good advice.
I always think of Volkswagen with their branding. It's like every time. Done a lot of studies on it. Memorable. And that's the
Yes.
thing, is like creating that brand recognition, that memorable moment that people will connect to and remember you from, was it 2011, 2012, 2011?
Right.
10 years later. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm certainly not in the market for a supercar, but my 13-year-old son is really into supercars. So we will frequently take like a weekday field trip and go visit a dealership. And from my experience, I don't know anything about supercars, but the McLaren dealers that we have visited in multiple markets, both in Denver and in Phoenix, have just treated both of us. He's a 13-year-old kid. He's not going to buy a car, but they have treated him like the most important prospective customer that you've ever seen. Like, oh, let me show you what we got in the back. Come take a tour of the garage. And do you want to sit in it? Do you want to touch it? Like it's been incredible to see how well that company is trained to make everybody feel special walking in there.
It's weird because when you started that story, I was going to be like, oh, they probably like walk you around in a circle and like kick you on your way.
Right.
But that's so interesting because to your point, you never know when that person is actually going to be a buyer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We've
Fingers
seen
crossed you guys get your McLaren someday.
That's right. We've seen some other really cool cars at other dealerships, but we have just had a more special experience at McLaren dealerships than anywhere else.
I love that. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that in-person experience can create that connection. Yeah. So you've reinvented your brand, your business, and your platform over the years several times and walked down different paths. There's this entrepreneurial mindset that you have. I think when you're embarking on all of these new paths, you are diving currently into a new podcast. You mentioned earlier on in the conversation that you sort of are starting some new things and starting over a little bit. I would love to talk to you about that entrepreneurial mindset and how that's guided you, how Bold Brand has evolved, and sort of what lessons you've learned about adapting the industry needs.
So my dad just recently retired and he was a financial planner for his career. So when your son's growing up as a little guy saying, I want to be an artist when I grow up, and you're a financial planner, like there's something that maybe doesn't connect there, but he was always really encouraging to me about that, and would say things like, you can do whatever you want, especially art, if you can figure out how to make money with it, like figure out how to make it make sense. And so I think I grew up watching my dad as an entrepreneur, like not as it was a scary or weird or even unique thing, but like that's just what you do because that was the only example that I had, was that's what he did. So, my wife will say things to me like, oh, you're brave, or you have this bravery gene or something. And I'm like, I don't think that's it. I think I just didn't know any other way. So I didn't know to be intimidated by it. I think if I knew all the things that could go wrong when I started my first business, I probably would have never done it. But I'm very glad that I did, and I wouldn't choose any other path. One of the crazy calculated, but maybe from a distance couldn't look crazy, is a couple months back I made an offer on a building here in Denver, and we're going to be opening a photo and video studio available for rent, called Fox Photo Studios, and it will be on Fox Street, kind of just north of Metro Denver. Should be open later this summer, available for productions to rent for photography and video. But really, it was like both an investment for the property, an opportunity to maybe have an income stream for people to rent it. And then bottom line, like I wanted a space to be able to shoot stuff. So, we're putting in a big cyc wall and lighting and all the things that like a production would need. So pretty excited about that. There's a super placeholder website up at foxphotostudios.com. But that's kind of my latest crazy. And then launching the new Bold Brand podcast that starts in early May of this year. So similar to you guys, this will be very AEC focused. So where my podcasts in the background were like personality driven, like how'd you get started and tell me about your childhood and all these, your heroes growing up.
Yep.
This is going to be more like, let's go deep on a topic about what things AEC leaders and marketers and visionaries are dealing with. And so it's going to be a twice a month, and we'll do both video episodes like you guys do here. And then once the studio is open, we'll be doing some live episodes recorded in the studio as well. So really looking forward to those.
Yeah. Will you have like a podcast set up in the studio?
Yeah, we already sort of have the corner figured out and the chairs and the seating and all that stuff. So right now we just have to get through the construction phases and clean it up a little bit.
I was going to say, Emily, you got to get your name, book some space.
Yeah. Yes.
I know, Jen, you got to fly out.
Yes.
We can re-record another episode with Josh in his
Very
new
cool.
space.
Yeah, we have one pair of chairs right now. I was even thinking like I need to get a couple different chairs so other people can do their show there and not feel like it's the exact same thing. But the ones that I have are like a really strong teal blue. So like maybe I just need some black ones or some white ones or something that will be a little bit less standout.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Congratulations on the new space and best of luck in the next few months as you're launching both the podcast and getting the space up to speed. I feel like that your example of like, you didn't know anything different from an entrepreneurial standpoint, right? It's what your dad did. I think a lot of people find themselves in AEC because of familial connections like that, right? Like my dad owned a firm or my dad worked in it. And you're so right. Like you don't know anything different, but what I think is so cool is that you get to express it in your own way, right? Like you got the entrepreneurial bug from your dad, but not in financial planning, in
Right.
brand and content and everything. So I love that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's been a really fun path. And 7 years ago, I was starting a job at SMPS as chief marketing officer. And I did that for 3 years, kind of took them through the rebrand, the brand rollout, and then, through COVID. So that was, that was a lot to go through. But by the end of that, I just sort of felt like I'd accomplished the things that I set out to do while I was there. And that entrepreneurial bug, it just is a real thing. So once it starts itching, you're like, man, I gotta do this. So I'm glad to be kind of back doing my own thing. And very different from my last agency where I had 20 some people. Like I'm the only person on payroll. So I bring in people when I have a big project. I help team that up and staff that up. And then we work on that project together, and that exact team may never be reassembled again, but it's a really cool thing to have that flexibility.
And fresh eyes and new combinations of eyes every time, probably, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So I was going to ask, you talked about being at SMPS during COVID and some, harder times, we were all unsure. What are you kind of seeing with clients, or how are your clients continuing to engage, just with maybe shifts in the economy? And, we always say you need to constantly be investing in future projects, right? Building your brand and making sure that pipeline is ready and available. So can you speak a little bit about why that's so important and how kind of your brand and assets and whatnot that you build are so integral to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of 2019, a few months before COVID, I was speaking at the Southwest Regional, and the talk that I did was sort of predicting the rise of the chief future officer, and that role still doesn't really exist anywhere. But what I was suggesting was, if you don't have somebody in your firm who's, not the CEO, not the operations person, not the marketing director, but their core focus is what is happening in the future. What does the runway look like? What threats do we have coming at us? What opportunities do we have? To really just be not worried about the day-to-day work, but really to be strategizing on how we should go to market quarter after quarter, and not just what is our strategic plan, because a lot of times those get locked in for 3 or 5 years, but someone to constantly be looking at that. And, I always joke, I'm sorry, after March of 2020, how correct I was, that if you don't have somebody looking out for what could be coming down the pike, that something could really bite your firm. But I think that's even just more evidence of how important it is for us to constantly be building our runway, to be thinking about what other kinds of projects we should be working on. And also, AEC has historically been so far behind from a marketing and branding and design standpoint when it comes to the marketing side of design. Other industries are typically 3 to 5 years ahead of what we're doing. Like, we are the last to have a website. We're the last to have social media. We're the last to be blogging or vlogging or doing video or podcasting. So in our world, it's not too hard to see what the future looks like, because our future is what's happening right now. So if you just pay attention to what are the most leading edge brands in retail or B2C, or even legal is usually a little bit ahead of what AEC is doing. Those are the things that we should be trying right now, not the things that are like so far out there that nobody's even trying it, but the companies who are already doing these things and succeeding. Those are the things that AEC should try to adopt way sooner, because typically we don't.
Yeah. Great advice. Yeah, I like it. Cool. Well, I think before we wrap, Emily, we have got one last question for Josh. Okay. Oh, you're on mute.
Yes. Yep. One last question.
We'll edit that
Yes.
section out.
Yeah. So, Josh, what advice would you give to that next generation of AEC leaders, embracing change, making connections, and thinking like an entrepreneur?
Well, I think if there's anything that we've already talked about that I think people could really leverage on their own, it's build a network. It is surrounding yourself with people who will help you to grow and build your business, and people who are, not just great connections for business, but also people that and like and trust. And those are the people that you want to surround yourself with. And if you're starting in a new market or a new job or whatever, be intentional about it. Like, make that list of who are the people that I want to surround myself with, and am I regularly touching base with them? In my case, I didn't know any of the creative community outside of AEC here in Denver. So there's a handful of folks that I've met here since moving here in June full time. And I try to grab coffee with them every couple months and reach out and say, hey, let's catch up. Let me hear about what you're doing and what's going on. And just building those initial friendships. So if there's anything that you can do early on, I think absolutely build the network.
Power of connection. That's sort of how you and I met. Josh and I serve on the SMPS Colorado board. So, and then you worked with Scott, our leader and director at Stambaugh Ness on the national board. And so very grateful to be connected to you. And thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. Your energy and insights are just such a great reminder that we do not need to have all the answers. We just need to be willing to start and stay curious. To all of our listeners, if you enjoyed the episode today, be sure to subscribe, share it with your team, and follow us on LinkedIn. And don't forget to check out Josh's new podcast, and we will link to it in the show notes.
Awesome. So great talking to both of you. Thanks so much for having me.
You as well.